Before I dive in, let me tell you, this story isn't just about a house. It's about betrayal, love, forgiveness, and the lengths we go to protect what matters most. If you've ever felt like your own family turned their back on you when you needed them most, this one's for you. So hit that subscribe button, because by the end of this series, I promise you'll have a lump in your throat, and maybe even a new perspective on life. Let me start by introducing myself. I'm Elizabeth Grayson, but everyone calls me Liz. I live in Maplewood, New Hampshire, in a beautiful Victorian home that my late husband, Jack, and I bought together over 30 years ago. This house, it's more than bricks and wood, it's memories. Every creaky floorboard whispers stories of laughter, tears, and countless cups of coffee sipped on the porch as the sun rose over the trees. But here's the thing. Last year I got sick. Really sick. Chronic fatigue, joint pain, and a laundry list of other symptoms that left me too weak to do much more than sit in my favorite armchair with a blanket wrapped around me. And while I was fighting to stay strong, my daughter Claire, my only child, decided she knew better than me. She thought she could sell my house behind my back. Yeah, you heard that right. Sell. My house. Now, don't get me wrong. Claire's not a villain. She's ambitious, smart, and fiercely independent. But somewhere along the way, she stopped seeing me as her mom and started seeing me as, well, an inconvenience. A burden. At least, that's how it felt when I found out what she'd been planning. So buckle up, folks. Because this is the story of how my daughter tried to take away the one thing that kept me grounded during the hardest year of my life, and how I fought back with everything I had. Stay tuned. If you're anything like me, you probably have that one person in your life who makes you want to scream into a pillow, but also hug them until they can't breathe. For me, that person is Claire, my brilliant, driven, infuriatingly stubborn daughter. When Claire was little, she used to follow me around the garden, asking a million questions about why roses smelled so sweet or why bees didn't sting flowers. Back then, she looked at me like I was some kind of superhero. Now, not so much. These days, she looks at me like I'm a problem she needs to solve. And trust me, solving problems is Claire's specialty. As a real estate agent in Boston, she's all about efficiency, profit margins, and maximizing assets. Translation: she thinks my house is worth more sold than lived in. I remember the first time she brought up selling the house. It was during one of her rare visits last spring. She walked through the living room, tapping her phone screen like she was inspecting a crime scene. "Mom," she said, without looking up, "this place is falling apart. You could sell it, move into something smaller, and use the money for your medical bills." At the time, I laughed it off. "This house isn't going anywhere," I told her. But deep down, I felt a chill run down my spine. Because Claire doesn't joke about things like this. When she sets her mind to something, she doesn't stop until she gets it. Little did I know, she'd already started making plans. You know those neighbors who become more like family? That's Margaret O'Connor for me. Margaret moved in next door 40 years ago, fresh off the boat from Ireland with 2 suitcases and a mouthful of sass. We've been inseparable ever since. She's the kind of woman who'll bake you lasagna when you're sick, and then yell at you if you don't eat it. So when Claire started sniffing around the house like a shark circling its prey, I went straight to Margaret. Over tea and biscuits, I spilled everything. The arguments, the guilt trips, the way Claire talked to me like I was some helpless old lady. Margaret listened quietly, her sharp blue eyes narrowing with every word. Finally, she slammed her teacup down on the saucer. "Liz," she said, leaning forward, "you need to protect yourself. That girl means business, and she won't hesitate to steamroll you if you let her." Then she grinned, because Margaret always has a plan. "Leave it to me," she said. "We'll make sure she doesn't get her hands on this house without a fight." Looking back, I realized that conversation was the beginning of my backup plan. Margaret wasn't just offering moral support, she was preparing me for war. And boy, did we need it. Picture this. It's a crisp autumn morning, and I'm sitting in my kitchen with a cup of chamomile tea, trying to enjoy the peace and quiet. Suddenly, there's a knock at the door. I open it expecting UPS, or maybe Margaret with another batch of cookies. Instead, who do I see standing there? Claire, with a clipboard and a camera. "Hi, Mom," she chirped, breezing past me like she owned the place. I figured I'd come by and take some photos for the listing. just to get ahead of things. Listing. My blood ran cold. What listing? I asked, my voice shaking. Oh, the one I'm putting together for the house, she said casually, already snapping pictures of the fireplace. Don't worry, I've got it all under control. That's when I realized something terrifying. Claire wasn't just thinking about selling the house. She'd already started, without my permission, without even telling me. In that moment, I felt like the ground beneath me had crumbled. How could my own daughter betray me like this? After Claire's little photo shoot earlier that day, I decided enough was enough. No more tiptoeing around this issue. We were going to talk, really talk, and figure out what the hell was going on in her head. I made my famous lasagna. Yes, it's better than Margaret's, don't tell her, and set the table like we were having a nice family dinner. The kind we used to have before everything got complicated. Claire showed up promptly at 6, dressed in her usual power suit and heels, looking like she'd just stepped out of a magazine. She even brought a bottle of wine, which I appreciated, until she poured herself a glass and started rattling off numbers. Mom, she said, slicing into her lasagna, you're sitting on a gold mine here. The market's hot right now, and this house could easily fetch $800,000. Maybe more. I nearly choked on my fork. Excuse me. I managed to sputter. This isn't a gold mine, Claire. It's my home. Your dad and I built this life together. How can you put a price tag on that? She sighed dramatically, like I was being unreasonable. Mom, I'm not saying it doesn't mean anything to you. Of course it does. But think about it. You're sick, the upkeep is expensive, and honestly, this place is too big for you. Moving somewhere smaller would make your life easier. Easier? Was she serious? Did she really think trading memories for convenience was a fair deal? I felt anger bubbling inside me, but I forced myself to stay calm. Claire, I said slowly, this house isn't just 4 walls and a roof. It's part of who I am. Selling it wouldn't fix anything. It would rip me apart. But Claire wasn't listening anymore. She was too busy sketching out budgets and timelines on the back of her napkin. By the end of the meal, I realized something painful. My daughter didn't see me as a person anymore. To her, I was just another asset to manage. After Claire's little photo shoot earlier that day, I decided enough was enough. No more tiptoeing around this issue. We were going to talk, really talk, and figure out what the hell was going on in her head. I made my famous lasagna. Yes, it's better than Margaret's, don't tell her, and set the table like we were having a nice family dinner. The kind we used to have before everything got complicated. Claire showed up promptly at 6, dressed in her usual power suit and heels, looking like she'd just stepped out of a magazine. She even brought a bottle of wine, which I appreciated, until she poured herself a glass and started rattling off numbers. Mom, she said, slicing into her lasagna, you're sitting on a gold mine here. The market's hot right now, and this house could easily fetch $800,000. Maybe more. I nearly choked on my fork. Excuse me. I managed to sputter. This isn't a gold mine, Claire. It's my home. Your dad and I built this life together. How can you put a price tag on that? She sighed dramatically, like I was being unreasonable. Mom, I'm not saying it doesn't mean anything to you. Of course it does. But think about it. You're sick, the upkeep is expensive, and honestly, this place is too big for you. Moving somewhere smaller would make your life easier. Easier? Was she serious? Did she really think trading memories for convenience was a fair deal? I felt anger bubbling inside me, but I forced myself to stay calm. Claire, I said slowly, this house isn't just 4 walls and a roof. It's part of who I am. Selling it wouldn't fix anything. It would rip me apart. But Claire wasn't listening anymore. She was too busy sketching out budgets and timelines on the back of her napkin. By the end of the meal, I realized something painful. My daughter didn't see me as a person anymore. To her, I was just another asset to manage. The next morning, I woke up with a knot in my stomach. Something about last night's conversation didn't sit right with me. Claire had left her briefcase behind, a rare mistake for someone so meticulous, and as much as I hated to invade her privacy, I couldn't shake the feeling that I needed answers. Inside, tucked between papers and folders, was something that made my blood run cold. A manila envelope labeled Grayson Property Listing Agreement. My hands trembled as I opened it. There, staring back at me, was a contract, with my name signed at the bottom. Except it wasn't my signature. It was hers. Forged. I felt like the wind had been knocked out of me. My own daughter had gone behind my back and listed my house without my knowledge. Worse, she forged my name to do it. All those years of raising her, teaching her right from wrong, and this is where it led us. I called Margaret immediately. "You won't believe what I just found," I said, my voice shaking. When I told her about the folder, she let out a string of expletives that would have made a sailor blush. "That girl has gone too far," Margaret snapped. "We need to act fast, Liz. You can't let her get away with this." For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of determination. Margaret was right. This wasn't just about the house anymore. It was about standing up for myself and proving to Claire that I wasn't some helpless old woman she could push around. By noon, I was sitting in Henry Whitaker's cozy office in Concord. Henry and I go way back. He handled Jack's estate after he passed and helped me set up my will. He's the kind of lawyer who listens more than he talks, and when I finally broke down and told him everything, he didn't interrupt once. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. "Liz," he said gently, "this is fraud. And if you want to stop her, we'll need evidence. Do you still have that folder?" I nodded, pulling it out of my bag. His eyes narrowed as he flipped through the documents. "This is good," he said. "But there's something else we should consider." That's when he reminded me of a trust fund I'd set up years ago, the one I'd almost forgotten about. "Remember," he asked, "you created it specifically to cover the costs of maintaining the house if anything ever happened to you. If Claire knew about this, she might not feel the need to sell." I blinked, stunned. "You're right," I whispered. "But I never told her about it. I guess I didn't think she'd care." Henry smiled grimly. "Well, maybe it's time she learned." Walking out of his office, I felt a strange mix of relief and dread. Relief because I finally had a plan. Dread because I knew this was only the beginning of a long, hard fight. Let me tell you something about Margaret O'Connor. She doesn't just suggest a plan. She orchestrates it like a 5-star general. After I left Henry's office, I went straight to her house, where she greeted me with a pot of tea and an expression that said, "We're going to war." "Here's the deal," she said, pulling out a yellow legal pad covered in scribbles. "If Claire thinks this house is ready to sell, we need to make sure she realizes how wrong she is. And fast. Her idea: make the house look completely uninhabitable, at least temporarily. Not enough to ruin it, mind you, but enough to scare off any potential buyers. Margaret called it Operation Chaos. I called it desperate, but desperate times call for desperate measures. That afternoon, we got to work. Dishes piled up in the sink, clothes were strewn across the living room, and Margaret even dumped a bucket of water in the basement to simulate a leak. It felt strange, almost sacrilegious, to treat my beloved home this way, but every creaky floorboard and dusty corner reminded me why I was doing it. This house wasn't just mine, it was Jack's, too. Our sanctuary, and I'd be damned if Claire sold it out from under me. By the time we finished, the place looked like a tornado had swept through. Margaret stood back, hands on her hips, surveying our handiwork. "Perfect," she declared. "Now let's see what your daughter does when she sees this mess." The day of the open house arrived, and nerves bubbled inside me like soda fizz. Claire had invited realtors, prospective buyers, and even some nosy neighbors, all without bothering to check if I approved. When I heard the first knock at the door, I retreated upstairs, pretending to take a nap. Margaret, bless her heart, volunteered to stay behind as quality control. I peeked out my bedroom window as cars pulled into the driveway. Claire greeted everyone with her signature charm, clipboard in hand, looking every bit the polished professional. But then came the murmurs. "This place needs a lot of work. Is that mold in the basement? What happened to the kitchen?" One by one, the visitors drifted out, shaking their heads. By the time Claire made her way upstairs to confront me, her face was red with fury. "What did you do?" she demanded, throwing open my bedroom door. "This house was supposed to shine today. Instead, it looks like a disaster zone." I feigned innocence. "Oh dear," I said sweetly. "Must have slipped my mind to clean up after myself. You know how forgetful I get these days." She stared at me, disbelief written all over her face. For a moment, I thought she might explode. Instead, she stormed out, muttering something about canceling the event. As the last car drove away, I allowed myself a small smile. Round 1 definitely went to me. With the open house fiasco behind us, I decided it was time to dig deeper into Claire's scheme. Armed with the forged documents and Margaret's relentless energy, I met with Henry again to discuss next steps. He suggested we gather more evidence, not just of the forgery, but of Claire's intentions. You need to record your conversations with her, he advised. It'll help build a case if things escalate legally. Recording my own daughter? The thought made me sick to my stomach. But Henry was right. If Claire was willing to forge my signature, who knew what else she might try? That evening, I set up a small recorder in the dining room and invited Claire over for dinner. She arrived looking exhausted, dark circles under her eyes. For a moment, I felt a pang of guilt. Was I pushing her too hard? Then I remembered the folder and the betrayal and pushed those feelings aside. Over chicken casserole, I casually steered the conversation toward the house. Claire, I said, why are you so determined to sell? Is it really about helping me, or is there something else? Her defenses went up immediately. Mom, I already told you. It's practical. You can't keep living like this. And what about the trust fund? I pressed. Did you know I have money set aside specifically for the house? Her jaw dropped. What trust fund? That's when I realized she truly had no idea. Whatever her motives were, they weren't driven by greed, at least, not entirely. Still, I let the recorder run as we argued, capturing every word. When she finally left, slamming the door behind her, I felt both triumphant and hollow. Winning against my own child shouldn't feel this bittersweet. The tension between Claire and me reached a boiling point over the next few days. Every phone call ended in shouting. Every text exchange devolved into accusations. I could feel the cracks forming, not just in our relationship, but in my resolve. Was I being too harsh? Too stubborn? One night, unable to sleep, I wandered into the living room and found Margaret sitting there, knitting by lamplight. You look like you've seen a ghost, she said, glancing up. I'm starting to wonder if I'm the villain here, I admitted, sinking onto the couch. Maybe Claire really does think she's helping. Margaret put down her needles and fixed me with a stern look. Liz, listen to me. You're protecting your home, your memories, your life. That doesn't make you the bad guy. But, she hesitated. Have you ever stopped to ask yourself why she's so obsessed with fixing everything for you? Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. Why was Claire so hell-bent on controlling my life? Was it guilt? Fear? Or something deeper, a longing for connection she didn't know how to express? As much as I wanted to hate her for what she'd done, I couldn't ignore the nagging suspicion that maybe, just maybe, there was more to her actions than met the eye. I'll never forget the day I called for a family meeting. It felt surreal, almost like summoning Claire to court. But this wasn't about judgment, it was about truth. With Margaret and Henry by my side, because let's face it, I needed backup, I invited Claire over on a Saturday afternoon. The air was thick with unspoken tension as we all gathered around the dining table. Claire, I began, my voice steady despite the storm inside me, we need to talk about what's been happening. About the house. And about us. She crossed her arms defensively, clearly expecting another argument. But then Henry spoke up, his calm demeanor disarming her just enough to listen. He laid out everything. The forged documents, the recordings of our conversations, even the existence of a trust fund she knew nothing about. Each revelation hit her like a punch to the gut. When he finished, there was silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. Finally, Claire looked at me, her eyes brimming with tears. Mom, I didn't know about the trust fund, she whispered. I thought you were drowning, and I wanted to help. I swear, that's all I wanted. For the first time in weeks, I saw vulnerability in her. Not the polished real estate agent or the frustrated daughter, but the scared little girl who used to hold my hand. My heart ached, torn between anger and compassion. Once the initial shock wore off, Claire erupted. Not in anger this time, but in pain. Why didn't you tell me about the trust fund? She demanded, her voice cracking. Why do you keep things from me? Do you think I'm incapable of understanding? Her words stung because they were true, at least partially. I had kept the trust fund a secret, not because I doubted her abilities, but because I feared her reaction. Would she see it as charity? As proof that I didn't trust her? I didn't tell you because I was afraid. I admitted softly. Afraid you'd resent me for having something you didn't know about. Afraid you'd see me as weak instead of strong. Henry chimed in gently, steering the conversation towards solutions. What if, he suggested, Elizabeth retains ownership of the house, but Claire manages the trust fund under agreed-upon conditions. That way, both of you have a stake in its future. It was a bold idea, one that required compromise on both sides. Claire hesitated, chewing her lip as she processed the proposal. Then, slowly, she nodded. Okay, she said, but only if we agree to communicate better. No more secrets. Just when I thought the meeting couldn't get any heavier, Margaret leaned forward, her knitting needles forgotten in her lap. There's something else you two need to hear, she said, her Irish brogue thickening with emotion. Liz, love, do you remember when Jack passed away? Of course I remembered. How could I forget? Those months had been the darkest of my life. But where was Margaret going with this? You shut everyone out back then, she continued. Even Claire. She was just a teenager, Liz, and she needed her mother. Instead, she got silence. Maybe that's why she feels the need to control everything now, to fix what she couldn't fix then. Claire's head snapped up, her eyes wide with realization. Is that true? She asked quietly. Did I remind you of him too much? My throat tightened. Yes, she had. Every time I looked at her during those early days after Jack's death, I saw pieces of him. The same stubbornness, the same fiery determination. It hurt too much to face, so I pushed her away without realizing the damage I was doing. I'm so sorry, I whispered, tears streaming down my face. I didn't mean to hurt you, sweetheart. I didn't know how to grieve. Claire reached across the table, taking my hand in hers. For the first time in years, it felt like we were truly connecting, not as adversaries, but as mother and daughter. By the end of the meeting, we had a tentative plan. Claire would oversee the trust fund, using it to cover maintenance costs and renovations for the house. In return, I promised to involve her in decisions about the property moving forward. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. Still, the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Old wounds don't heal overnight, and trust, once broken, takes time to rebuild. As Claire packed up her things to leave, she paused at the door. Mom, she said, turning back to look at me, I really am sorry. For everything. I know, sweetheart, I replied. And I'm sorry, too. We hugged, a long, tight embrace that felt like forgiveness wrapped in hope. When she finally left, I sank into my chair, exhausted but lighter somehow. Margaret patted my shoulder. You did good, Liz, she said. Now comes the hard part. The next week marked the beginning of a new chapter for the house and for us. Claire threw herself into renovating the place, hiring contractors, and overseeing repairs with a level of enthusiasm I hadn't seen in years. She even convinced me to repaint the front door a cheerful shade new coat of paint, symbolizing fresh starts. As we worked side by side, sanding floors and scrubbing walls, we began to talk, not just about logistics, but about memories. Claire shared stories I'd never heard before, like how she used to hide in the attic reading books when she was supposed to be doing chores. I told her about the summer Jack and I planted the garden together, laughing until our sides hurt. Slowly but surely, the walls between us started to crumble. Not just the literal ones covered in chipped paint, but the emotional barriers we built over years of misunderstandings. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Claire and I sat together on the porch, sipping lemonade and watching fireflies dance in the twilight. It was peaceful, a moment of stillness after so much chaos. Mom, Claire said suddenly, breaking the quiet, do you think we'll ever be okay again? Really okay? I set my glass down and turned to look at her. We're already getting there, I said honestly. It won't happen overnight, but we're trying. And that's what matters. She smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes for the first time in ages. Thanks for not giving up on me. Never, I replied, squeezing her hand. You're my daughter. My home isn't just these four walls, it's you too. There's something magical about a neighborhood barbecue, especially in Maplewood, where everyone knows everyone else's business. Margaret, ever the social butterfly, insisted on hosting one to celebrate the completion of the house renovations. It'll be good for you both, she said with a wink. Show the town that Grayson women are unbreakable. I wasn't so sure about that, but Claire surprised me by agreeing enthusiastically. Maybe it was her way of saying thank you to me, to Margaret, and to the community that had supported us through everything. Or maybe she just wanted an excuse to show off her handiwork on the house. Either way, I was grateful. The day of the barbecue arrived, and our backyard transformed into a lively gathering spot. Neighbors brought dishes, kids ran around chasing each other, and someone had the brilliant idea to set up a karaoke machine. It was chaos in the best possible way. As I stood by the grill flipping burgers, I watched Claire mingle effortlessly, laughing with neighbors and sharing stories about the renovation process. She seemed lighter somehow, like a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. Seeing her like this reminded me of the daughter I once knew, warm, open-hearted, and full of life. Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the tree-line and the crowd began to thin, Claire pulled me aside. Her expression was serious, almost nervous. "Mom, can we talk?" she asked. We sat down on the porch steps, the cool night air wrapping around us like a blanket. For a moment, she hesitated, fiddling with the hem of her sweater. Then she took a deep breath and began. "I've been thinking a lot lately," she said slowly, "about how much I messed up, about how selfish I was. I thought I was helping, but really, I was trying to fix things I didn't understand. Like Dad's death, and your illness, and my own guilt for not being here enough." Her honesty caught me off guard. I'd spent so long blaming her for what happened that I hadn't stopped to consider how much pain she'd been carrying too. "Claire," I said gently, "we both made mistakes. But what matters is that we're here now. Together." She nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "You know, working on the house these past few weeks, it made me realize something. This place isn't just wood and nails. It's love, sacrifice, memories. And I want to honor that, not destroy it." Her words filled me with pride and hope. For the first time in years, I truly believed we could move forward, not just as mother and daughter, but as partners. In the weeks that followed, Claire underwent a transformation, not just in her relationship with me, but in herself. Inspired by the sense of community she'd rediscovered during the barbecue, she decided to shift her focus at work. Instead of chasing high-end sales, she began volunteering her skills to help local families find affordable housing. "It feels good to give back," she told me one evening over dinner. "Like I'm finally using my talents for something meaningful." I couldn't have been prouder. Watching her grow into a more compassionate, self-aware person was like seeing a flower bloom after a long winter. And while I knew there would still be challenges ahead, I also knew we were stronger now, both individually and together. By late spring, my health had improved significantly. The new treatment plan my doctor prescribed was working wonders, and having Claire around made a world of difference. She visited regularly, often bringing groceries or helping with household chores. Sometimes, we'd simply sit together in comfortable silence, reading or watching old movies. One afternoon, as we sorted through boxes in the attic, I stumbled upon a stack of letters Jack had written to me before he passed away. They were filled with love, laughter, and promises of forever. Tears welled up in my eyes as I read them aloud to Claire, who listened intently, her own eyes misty. "These letters remind me of why I fought so hard to keep this house," I admitted. "They're part of him, part of us." Claire hugged me tightly, her voice soft but steady. "I get it now, Mom. You weren't just fighting for a building, you were fighting for family." Her understanding meant more to me than words could express. In that moment, I realized that healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means finding a way to carry the past with you without letting it weigh you down. The final piece of our journey came unexpectedly. One Saturday morning, Claire showed up at the house with a suitcase in hand. "What's this?" I asked, gesturing to the bag. "I'm moving back to Maplewood," she announced, her tone leaving no room for argument. "Permanently." My jaw dropped. "Are you serious?" "Dead serious," she replied with a grin. "I've already lined up a job at a local real estate agency, and I found a little apartment downtown. But don't worry, I'll still be around to bug you all the time." I laughed through tears, pulling her into a hug. "Welcome home, sweetheart." As the seasons changed, so did we. Claire settling into Maplewood felt like the final piece of a puzzle I hadn't even realized was incomplete. Having her nearby wasn't just convenient, it was comforting. She started joining me for morning coffee on the porch, sharing stories about her day or asking questions about the past. It was during one of these quiet mornings that I found myself reflecting on everything we'd been through. "Claire," I said, sipping my tea, "do you ever think about legacy? About what we leave behind?" She tilted her head thoughtfully. "I guess I used to think it was about money or achievements. But now, I think it's about relationships. The people we touch. The love we share." Her answer surprised me, not because it was profound, but because it mirrored my own thoughts so perfectly. This house, this life I've built, it's not just mine. It belongs to Jack, to Claire, and someday, to whoever comes after us. That's what makes it worth protecting. "I'm proud of you, you know," I told her, my voice soft but steady. "For how far you've come. For choosing kindness over ambition. For learning to see this place, not as an asset but as a home." She smiled, reaching over to squeeze my hand. "Thanks, Mom. I couldn't have done it without you." One rainy afternoon, inspired by the letters I'd found in the attic, I decided to write some of my own. Not to Jack this time, but to Claire. I wanted her to know how much she means to me, not just in words spoken aloud, but in something tangible she could hold on to. Sitting at the kitchen table with pen and paper, I poured my heart out. I wrote about her childhood, her resilience, and the joy she brings me, even on the hardest days. I confessed my fears, my regrets, and my hopes for her future. By the time I finished, tears were streaming down my face, but they were happy tears. When Claire came over later that week, I handed her the envelope. "What's this?" she asked, eyeing it curiously. "It's for you," I replied, "to read whenever you need reminding of how much you're loved." She opened it right there, her eyes scanning the pages as her expression shifted from curiosity to awe. When she finally looked up, her cheeks were wet with tears. "Mom, I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," I said gently. "Just promise me you'll keep finding ways to spread that love, to yourself, to others, to the world." She nodded, clutching the letter to her chest. "I promise." And so here we are. The house still stands tall, its walls weathered but strong, its gardens thriving under Claire's care. It's become more than just a home. It's a symbol of everything we've overcome together. Of forgiveness, of growth, of second chances. On sunny afternoons, you can often find us sitting on the porch, watching the world go by. Sometimes, Claire will tease me about my stubbornness, and I'll laugh, calling her out for her bossiness. Other times, we'll sit in silence, content simply to be in each other's presence. This journey hasn't been easy, and truthfully, it's not over yet. Life is messy, complicated, unpredictable. But isn't that what makes it beautiful? Isn't that why we hold on to the things that matter most? If there's one thing I've learned through all of this, it's this. Home isn't a place, it's a feeling. A connection. A bond that no amount of money or distance can break. And as long as I have Claire by my side, I know I'll always have a home. So here's to the house that held our hearts, and to the family that made it whole. Thank you for listening to this story. If it resonated with you, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. Because in the end, we're all searching for the same thing, a place to belong. And sometimes, that place is closer than we think. Until next time, take care, and remember, love always finds a way.